So we've covered a lot of really essential ideas of programming and computer science today. We've talked about iteration and variables, conditionals. These things are all really important. We're going to talk about one more idea that I think is up there with all these and that we're going to use a lot throughout your whole time doing creative programming. And that's something called a function. And we've actually seen functions before. A good example of them would be setup and draw, which we've had every day. But let's talk about what they are, how they're structured, and how we can make our own functions. So our function has a couple of pieces. The word function, this is important. It tells processing this is what we're doing. You have the name for the function. In this case, it's setup or draw. Then you've got the parentheses. In the case of setup and draw, those are empty. There's nothing there. Background is also a function, and in this case, it's got a number in there for the color. Create canvas is also a function where it has two numbers, the width and the height. So that's arguments separated by commas. Then you've got the curly brackets, which define kind of the what's inside the function, and then you've got your code. So if we sort of abstract this a little bit, we can think of a template being the word function, then the name of the function, argument, maybe more than one, maybe none, curly brackets, and then some code inside. Functions are really great because they allow us to create structures that we can use over and over, that we can customize. We can think smartly about how we want to do this. So let's do a simple kind of boring example and then use it to make some drawing. So let's say we want to add two numbers together. Obviously, we don't need a function to do this, but we're going to do it anyway. So I'm going to go down at the very bottom. So I'm outside of setup and I'm outside of draw. And I'm going to say function sum. Let's call it add. And I'm going to have A and B. And then inside here, I'm going to say let sum equals A plus B. So I'm going to combine those two numbers. And then some functions are going to send a value back. And in this case, I want to add these two numbers and give me back the result. So I can say return sum, and return send something back. So this is our template. This is a basic template for anytime we want to add two numbers together. The function is called add. The arguments are two values separated by commas. We're going to add them together and send back the result. And then if we want to use this, I can say let C equal add 1 and 2, console.log C. And you can see it prints 3. If I change this to be 80, it's now equal to 81. I'm creating this variable. I'm setting it equal to the result of this function that I've created. And the nice thing here now is if I want to use add over and over in my program, I have this basic template. I don't have to rewrite the code to do that. Now, obviously, adding two numbers together really doesn't need its own function, but it gives you an idea of how we might use this. So let's say we want to draw something using this. Maybe we want to draw some dots, some circles, kind of around a center point, like this, sort of like the number 4 on a dice. Again, of course, we could do this totally manually, but we're gonna create a function for this. So again, down here in the bottom, function, and I'm going to call this draw 4 circles. And this is where we got to start thinking. So sum requires 2 numbers. What should 4 circles get? Well, there's lots of ways that we could think about doing this. I think I'm going to want an X and a Y position. So 2 arguments for that. And then maybe let's leave it like that for now. We can keep adding to it. Now I'm going to use matrix transformations. And if you need to review 2 videos back, we talked about that. I'm going to say push and pop, translate X and Y. So now 0, 0, the origin point, has been moved to that X and Y position. So now I'm drawing relative to 0, 0. Now I want to think about drawing 4 circles. And for that, I can do, I could do 0, 0, but then they'd all be on top of each other. I could do, -10, -10, or something like that, and hard code it in, but that doesn't give me a lot of flexibility. So maybe I want to include a variable called spacing, and that's going to be how far apart are my circles. And so then I can think about, if this is my point, I might want to draw a circle up here, 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 and here. This would be negative spacing. So that'd be minus, minus, plus. I can't draw a circle with the trackpad. And plus, all relative to this point, which is 0, 0. So my upper left here would be negative spacing, up, negative spacing. And then we need one more value for our circle, which is its size. And so I'm going to add one more while I'm here, the diameter, dia being short for diameter. And I think that's all I need now to draw this. And this would be a good example of adding comments to help you keep track. So this is upper left, circle. And if we want to do upper right, that would be positive spacing, negative spacing, upper right. Circle lower right would be spacing, spacing. And then lastly, down this direction, which would be negative spacing, spacing, lower right. Cool. And then maybe one more thing we want to add is just like a fill, no stroke. Like that. Cool. So we can think of this as our template. It's got a function as a name called draw 4 circles. It's got 4 arguments, the x and y position, how far apart our circles should be and how big they should be. Then I'm using matrix transformations to move the origin to that point, drawing it all relative to 0, 0, pop. And then you'll notice it doesn't return anything. It doesn't send anything back because we're not calculating or anything like that. Now we can say draw 4 circles. Let's do it the center. Our spacing, maybe we can make 100 and our diameter of 8. Let's just try that. Here we go, pretty cool. So there's our 4, let's make this a little darker so we can see it. Awesome, so we've got our circles, the spacing is 100. If I change this to be 10, now they're much closer together. Our diameter we can make bigger or smaller. And this makes it a really flexible piece of code. If I want to draw this more than once, you can see now all I have to do is call this same command, and it makes it really easy for me to reuse and sort of tweak and manipulate this. Pretty cool. So let's try using this in a for loop. And again, this is where this idea of like combining 2 ideas becomes really, really powerful. So let's say I want to draw a grid of these things. And we looked at that a little bit in the 2D iteration 1. So we can say for let y equals 0, y is less than height. There's my spacing. Sorry, let me move this over just so you can see a little bit. There we go. It's the problem with having not enough room on the screen. Width x plus equals 100. And then we can say draw 4 circles, x, y, 10, and 10. And now we get this pattern across here. And if we were to change any of these kind of values, we're going to change how it appears. So, maybe our dots get smaller. And we could even make these things global variables way up at the top so we could change it for our whole sketch. And you can start to see how these things kind of like piece together. Yeah, so that's functions. There's really not that much to it. It's basically just taking all the stuff. So think about like the arrow example we did with the matrix transformations. It's taking those commands and moving them into their own structure where they're easier to find, easier to change or update, easier to make them tweakable by being able to pass arguments to it so that you can change its behavior. And we have one more video demoing stuff this week. That's the next one. And we're going to talk about optional arguments. This is kind of advanced. So if you're not like feeling functions yet, don't sweat it. You can skip ahead to the homework. But it's a cool one where we can add some kind of like extra special functionality to our functions.